Kabangka that wasn't there 4 years ago. I put the line, generations later, our hearts whispers through the looser seams of this boat, because to me, it feels like our ancestors are kind of like steeped in mystery or mysticism, just because the history of the Philippines isn't as, how would I say, as fleshed out as the history in a lot of Western worlds. And that could be just from the lack of literature, or maybe there was literature and it was destroyed, or we can't find it anymore. So kind of picturing that the people before you were somewhere really out there, like literally space, and then generations later you're kind of like stuck on Earth, and you think about how maybe at one point you guys were something amazing. You were like up there where you could have watched the Earth beat to the rhythms of your rowing. Kabangka has evolved a lot, and a lot of it, I kind of want to think of it as like self-reflection, but a lot of it was every time I kind of wanted to perform Kabangka at a gig, I realized, oh, I need to edit this down. Kabangka used to be a really long poem. I think it was as I was weaving down that poem, I kind of like understood what Kabangka was about. And when I got rid of all the extra stuff, the actual essence of a story where you are someone nostalgic about your past that you don't even know much about, so you've sort of mysticized it, kind of came to view. There's another line that wasn't there in Kabangka where after Milky Way and honey, and then that section where I say, but they told us we had been angels. Before it was like, and then we had been angels who had fallen from the edge of the universe. But I added the, and then they told us that we used to be angels, because a lot of our history is not only word of mouth from like our parents or like from teachers or mentors, but a lot of it is from people who aren't even in like our history, right? Like from people who aren't Filipino, they tell us, oh yeah, you guys used to be this, right? Usually when I introduce this poem, I mention, oh, it's called Kabangka, which roughly in Tagalog translates into one boat. And I introduce a very simple metaphor where back when the Philippines was colonized, people were spread out both emotionally and definitely physically because islands, but it was all okay because they used the metaphor, we are still, Kabangka, we're still in one boat, we're also connected. And that was how I used to introduce the piece, like every single event, that's how I would introduce it. But then lately, like I said, it came with a different meaning, where it could mean that, but it could also mean that feeling of being second generation, being in a country that people don't really call your own, even though you grew up like in Canada or in Toronto. And every time you mention the Philippines, people will be like, oh, did you ever go back? Have you ever gone home? And they're talking about a country you either have never been to or you've only visited once. And it's that strange feeling where you don't really call it home because you don't really know that place. You grew up here, but at the same time, it's kind of home. So it's that really strange nostalgic feeling when you think about home, like how the people in the poem, they grew up in their boat in Earth. And they think about home, which is like out there somewhere in the atmosphere where their ancestors looked down on Earth. And they just kind of like the sentiment that comes with it of confusion, but of like an inner like nostalgia. It's strange that I just rediscover stuff that I wrote myself, It's kind of like when you think introspectively about yourself and you don't realize something about yourself. I found that in my poem. So it forced me to be very critical with my poem, and open to the idea that maybe it could change. Because there's definitely some like pieces that I've looked at before where I thought, no, I'll never change this, it's great. But then allowing a piece to evolve with you kind of also doesn't like invalidate what the piece used to be. When we stand at the edge of the universe, the stardust ebb and flow between our toes. We, the Filipinos, brush our shoulders against celestial wind, our body darkened from a million kisses from the galaxies. We comb our fingers through hair thick and wavy, washed in rivers of stars. From atop our island home, we glance down at the plants beneath us, bobbing in their heavenly swimming pool drenched. Limbs outstretched, Saturn's arms clenched, her rings rolling on her wrists. And Mars' two moons squinting back at us. And there's beating like a heart, vessel stressing around the sapphire muscles as its rhythms match our racing hearts. Behind us, deep British blue meteor belts blossom into space, and red Spanish dust clouds form, the debris whistling past our ears like gunshots, driving us away. When we leap at the edge of the universe, elbows locked, knees braced, meteor belt scrapes against the hull of our boat, we leave behind our dying home tattered with red scabs and blue bruises. When we enter the atmosphere, thousands of ancestor stories will whistle past our ears, course through our bodies, as the earth races closer, bracing for impact, waiting for that resistance to resonate violently up our souls and into the spines of future generations. We will ride the blood rush through twisting streams and red ruby rivers, screaming at the top of our lungs as we teeter at the edge of the world, and feel for a moment our fears grow weightless. Generations later, our hearts flutter as a breeze whispers through the looser seams of this boat, wishing one day we could leave this home behind and return home, back there somewhere where the earth beat to the rhythms of our rowing. But instead we saw stars, hoping that among clouds of Sampaguita, galaxies will come bursting forth in Milky Way and honey. But instead, they told us we used to be angels who had fallen from the edge of the universe. These days, we trail our fingers against the surface of the water and watch our stories like the ripples begin growing. We are going everywhere and nowhere, knowing that our flowing is just another wave kissing the paddles of our rowing.